We are back on Morning Line. With us this morning, Davidson County District Attorney Glenn Funk. It's good to have him on. Appreciate you coming on today. We can take a few phone calls. The phone calls again this morning, what we're interested in is questions. If you're going to call and rail about something, I'm going to cut you off. We want questions, along those lines is what we'd like to hear, because this is a chance for you to ask a question of the district attorney in Davidson County. So please, questions, but if you have some strong opinion on something, you want to rail on it, don't want to hear it. All right, let's go to Drew. Drew, good morning. Hi, Drew.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
I'd like to know how come these lawmakers are clamping down so hard on the narcotics, but yet won't let medical marijuana through. It's something that would do such good for people who are in physical pain like myself.
Okay. I mean, you're not a lawmaker, but I mean, clearly how do you view marijuana? I've had Davidson County Sheriff Darren Hall on here, and I think he's like-minded with you. And he has said, Nick, it's just absurd to me that marijuana, which is a controlled substance, but, it is illegal. And I can go down to the store, liquor store on the corner, and buy a bottle of whiskey, get behind a wheel, and he just goes, in his mind, he doesn't see the difference between alcohol abuse and marijuana abuse, yet one's legal and one's not. How do you feel about it?
Right. Well, any of the narcotics cases are really about health as opposed to doing a violent act. And sometimes major drug traffickers are going to have violent acts attached to them because we're dealing with a lot of money in an illegal activity, and so there's going to be guns and violence that follows illegal activity at that level of cash. But as far as the simple possessions, what are we really talking about? We're talking about folks that have substance abuse issues, or if they don't have a substance abuse issue, it's still not a healthy activity. There's a lot of unhealthy activities that all of us might engage in. And when are we going to give somebody potential incarceration, the collateral consequences of an arrest, the collateral consequences of a conviction, because it really does impact their jobs and whether or not they can get a job, whether or not they can keep a job, whether or not they can get advanced within a job. It impacts people as far as where can they live and what kind of housing can you obtain. It impacts, if you have those limitations, it impacts how you're raising your kids and what kind of family you have. So what we have to do with all of these cases is look at them and try to figure out how can we make sure that this person is healthy going forward, but that also includes the ability to move forward with a job, housing, taking care of their family, and do those types of things. So all that is kind of a balancing act.
We see the rest of the country, a lot of states have legalized. Would you be in favor, based from the prosecutor's point of view, of legalizing marijuana in the state of Tennessee?
Right. Well, I'm not a legislator, right?
But you're a voter.
That is the legislature's job, right? But I think that there are a lot of there's a lot of behaviors that have been criminalized that might be better handled outside of the criminal justice realm. Look, marijuana is a perfect example, right? Some other simple possessions would be the same. Driving on a revoked license is a crime of poverty, right? And there's nobody that's driving on a revoked license who has the money to have paid off their last ticket or to have paid their child support or to do these things.
Unless it's for a DUI or something.
Right. Now, if it's a DUI, that's different. But we don't prosecute driving on a revoked license anymore unless they had a wreck, right? Or unless they're on probation for DUI at the time. But other than that, it's a crime of poverty. So now what happens when they're ready to turn themselves in on their citation, we withdraw that citation, but in a partnership with Sheriff Darren Hall, we actually sit down with the person, navigate through the bureaucratic red tape, find out exactly what they have to do to get their license back. And then if it's a situation where they might be behind on some fees or some fines, work with them to either get those waived or get a payment plan, but work with them to actually get their driver's license. Over 25% of the people that come through that program, so over 25% of the people that get a charge for driving on a revoked license, we've been able to verify have actually gotten their driver's license back within 60 days. That makes us a better city, because no longer are you having to look over your shoulder when you're just trying to drive to work or take your kids to the doctor. It helps you be able to be employed and stay employed. and even more importantly, in some ways, is if you have identification, then when an officer pulls you over, the officer knows who he's got or she's got pulled over, and so the officer can make a decision, do I need to call for backup? It's an officer safety issue as well. So for all those reasons, it's a great program to be able to get folks licensed. It also drives down our incarceration rate, and it ends up with Nashville being a safer place where we have more trust in the system. But to the caller's question, simple possession of many of the drugs that are criminalized falls in the same boat, which is let's pull out of the criminal justice system issues that are health related or poverty related and just deal on where people are hurting other people.
Let's take another call. This one for a question from Joanne. Hi, Joanne.
Glenn, I know what you did, and you're wrong for that.
It's Ms. Hambrick. Hey,
I'll make
Ms.
sure
Hambrick.
you don't go back in office. I'm making sure. And you low down. You're a dirty bag.
All right, well, that's Vicki Hambrick, and she watches the show, and I thought she might call in. She's obviously still upset about the Delkey decision and all of that. That's been dealt with. You've talked about it, but she obviously still feeling it.
Well, as the mother of a homicide victim, of course, she will always be heartbroken, right? My heart breaks for her, right? There's nothing that Vicki Hambrick has ever done that would cause her to deserve at all what she's been through, and she's been through a ton, right? I think our whole city should weep for the fact that any mother has lost a child to gun violence, especially gun violence from someone who had a badge and a gun and was sworn to protect and to serve. We've made a lot of progress in the last 6 years. Prior to that, the Metro Police Department always investigated itself, right? Which might be one of the reasons why no officer has ever really been charged for a officer-involved shooting. But I was able to essentially work with the TBI and get Mayor Beres and then Chief Anderson. Essentially, it was Mayor Beres telling Chief Anderson to sign off on the MOU, where the memorandum of understanding, where any officer involved shooting, the TBI is going to come and investigate. So we have an independent investigation.
Yeah.
I've worked with 4 administrations, Carl Dean, Megan Barry, David Briley, now John Cooper, to make sure that all of our officers have body cameras, right? Because body cameras can help us understand exactly what was happening at the time of any use of force.
Yeah.
But those two things don't end up changing the way that we police if there's no if there's no conviction at the end of that line.
Right.
I understand many people disagree with the decision that I made to resolve that case, and I understand that decision, in some ways, people might say, well, that's the system saying that Daniel Hambrick's life was only worth 3 years. But there were factors in that case, right? The fact that Daniel Hambrick was in fact armed at the time. Some of the other facts that would have come out at trial. That the overwhelming likelihood was going to be that was a hung jury, that there would not have been a conviction. If that had happened, then there would have been no incentive, right, for this change in training that Chief Drake is working on in order to try to make sure, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that no one else gets shot after a traffic stop escalates into an altercation. We don't want that to happen. At the same time, we don't want our police officers to not shoot if all of a sudden they have to shoot. It's a difference between can I shoot or do I have to shoot? And what we have to do is we got to have our police officers only shoot when they have to shoot. And that does happen sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so we want to make sure that we're supporting it. It doesn't make our officers any safer for a couple officers to shoot folks that they don't have to shoot, because then all of a sudden there's a distrust in the police department. But I think if we end up with a community where everybody knows that the law protects all of us and all of us are accountable to the law, then we end up having the police be our police, and we work to try to have a community where we're all working together for public safety.
Gotcha. Can I ask you another case? It's scheduled to go to trial in about a week and a half. Michael Mosley, that was the Dogwood Bar back just before Christmas, over a year ago. 2 young men stabbed to death. Question of Self-defense, I think Jan Norman is handling that case in your office, going to trial. Again, that's taken a year, but we've gotten past some of the COVID. But that does.
Jan Norman and Deputy District Attorney Amy Hunter are together handling the case for the state. It is set for trial in the next few weeks. Obviously, any violent crime, especially violent crime at that level, we're going to put the resources of our office to try to make sure that the city is safe. But I cannot comment on that case. I'll be glad to come back after the trial.
Well,
and talk about
have you
it.
seen the video? You have seen it, and you're convinced it was not self-defense.
I cannot comment on a pending case.
Can you show me the video? Oh, okay, you won't show me the video, will you? I had to ask. Okay, and before we go to break, real quickly, something else that we ended up reporting yesterday, you have the conviction review unit, which is neat. You've done some things where things have been reversed, and it's travesties of justice when someone serves a lot of time for not. Claude Garrett, that case, the individual who went to I guess, prison, was about almost 30 years ago, involved in a house fire. His girlfriend died in Hermitage and ended up, at the time, they believed it was arson. You've looked at it now, and I know the family had been in touch with folks in your office in the last couple of days saying it looks like you may vacate that conviction based on some of the expert testimony now. They've changed the way they investigate arsons now. Is that because more information has come up now that just wasn't available back when he was convicted?
I cannot comment on an individual case that is still pending and nothing has gone to court yet on that.
A judge has to sign off on it.
There has not been a filing on that case yet. We have met with the family. I can
And you told them what you're going to do.
I can verify that we have met with the family. But let's talk about fire investigations, because the science on fire investigations has dramatically improved over the last 30 years. Some characteristics of a fire that were interpreted one way in the 90s are now interpreted 180 degrees opposite. Some details of a fire investigation that might not have seemed significant then are now very significant. Some details that people thought were significant then are no longer significant based on the science that is developing with regards to burn patterns, with regards to where fire starts, how it spreads, all those different. The science is much better. Look, you know, if I had to have surgery in 2021 or 1995, would I rather have had the surgery in 2021? Yes, because science is so much better. We're making great progress. And it's not just in the medical field, it's in all of our scientific fields.
And as you said, with arson investigations, we all know the changes DNA's brought.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, that's a biggie. Listen, we'll take a break. When we come back, I've got some numbers here to go over with regard to incarceration rates and the savings it can bring when you're not locking up everyone for every type of crime, but maybe just violent ones. And we'll be back to take a few more phone calls as well right after this. Stay with us.